You can see her smiling face. Cheryl Lynn is an author of a really tremendous book. It's called Washing My Cup, My Journey of Walking in the Spirit. And I told her off the air that she just had the perfect title for what she talks about in this book. And I think her journey and sharing it with millions of you is so important, because I know there's people out there that are suffering through some of the same things that she dealt with as well. So Cheryl Lynn, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on today.
So let's talk about, first of all, what led you to write this book?
My youngest son, he was only 2 when I went through the divorce, and he did not experience the things that the older children and I had experienced, but he heard stories over the years. And so the family and I were all going to go on vacation to Hilton Head, which is a wonderful place. And he called me 3 weeks prior and asked me to write down some of the stories. And so I typed them up and turned it into like a little book and stapled all the papers and took it to the vacation. And about the 3rd day, that youngest son, he came running. He said, "Mom," he said, "you've got to turn this into a story. This will help so many people."
Wow. And so he was so smart to realize that and lead you down that path of wanting to write this book, because you do weave in your story where we'll tell people you were in a terribly abusive marriage, and you have these 7 wonderful children of all ages, super young and teenagers. So that had to be difficult. What was that like?
It was a good experience on one end, because I had all those children and they made it worth it all. But on the other side, it was frightening, because we lived in horrible abuse. But because of washing the inside of my cup, I was able to endure it and rise above it, even transcend above the abuse.
I love that. And so again, the title, Washing the Inside of My Cup, make sure we get that in there, Washing the Inside of My Cup. Because of that helped you go through that and be brave enough, right, to take the step of divorce.
Yes. I stayed in it for 20 years. Mainly, I was raised, divorce is wrong, work it out no matter what. And so in the beginning, I was determined that was what I was going to do. But over time, I realized divorce may be wrong, but living in abuse was wrong too. And so it was time. We'd been married 20 years, and he was beating up on one of our sons, and I was like, enough's enough. And so it was time to get out.
So and you talk about various stories in the book, but when you actually decided to make the decision, how difficult was it to get all the things in place to be able to maneuver that?
That was actually almost a flawless transaction, because the Lord was watching out for us. And I wasn't concerned about where I'd go or what I'd do, because I just knew He had our back.
And so that helped you mentally, for sure, right?
Yes. I just decided I was going to go back to school, and I enrolled in an RN ADN program. And so the first 2 years after I filed for divorce, I went to school. And my oldest daughter, who was at home, she was 17 at the time, and she had told me, she said, "Mom, I'll stay with you as long as you need me." And she actually stayed with me until she was 23. And she was like a second mom in the home. And so I got that degree, and she was also going to school and got a degree at the same time too.
Wow, that had to be interesting for your family.
Yeah, it was. It was. I had a lot of help. My parents stepped in and helped with some of my daughters, and the oldest son took in the youngest son under his wing and helped with him. And so it was, I was so blessed to have a big family because the big families rock. They all pitch in and help together.
Boy, that's true. Tell us more about your book. Tell us more about Washing the Inside of My Cup. And again, this is a book that you can get on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, My Journey of Walking in the Spirit.
Washing the Inside of the Cup is a heartfelt, faith-driven memoir chronicling my spiritual transformation from a 20-year-long physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually abusive marriage to being rooted in supernatural peace through total surrender of my heart to God. I used very deeply personal stories and a vision I received and divine encounters that I had to guide my readers through the grace that God gave me and the vision I received and the grace I embraced and the trials and abuse I endured. I walked my readers through that with being victorious through all of it.
Tell us one of your stories.
Oh, which one you want to hear? Which one touched you?
Tell us about the fire, which you didn't go into deeply.
Okay. My 7 children and I were at home, and it was snowing outside, and we probably had 6-7 inches of snow on the ground, and we had the fire going. And I put the fire out, and well, actually, my oldest daughter helped, and we put the fire out. We put all the ashes into a metal bucket and put it out on the back porch, and put snow on it, and it was fine. And I went to bed, and I thought the children went to bed too. But at the time, she was 7 years old. She thought she was a lot older than that, and she decided she was going to start a fire herself in the fireplace. And so she did the same thing we did, and when it's time to put it out, she put the ashes into a plastic trash can, thinking she was doing something good, and she put it out on the back porch and put snow in it and everything just like we did. Well, underneath that snow was a bunch of 2x4s. And so here in the middle of the night, 3 a.m, I actually a couple times had woke up and smelled smoke, and I thought, wow, that fireplace sure was strong. But about 3 a.m, a fireman walked into my room, and he said, "Get up, ma'am, your house is on fire." And I sat up. I said, "You've got to be kidding." He said, "No, ma'am." He said, "Is there anybody else in the house?" And I said, "I have 7 children upstairs." And he took off like lightning and got all of the children and brought them and had us all go outside and sit in the vehicle while they finished putting the fire out. And so afterwards, the fireman was talking with us, and I asked him, I said, "Who called this in?" And he said, "No one called it in." I said, "What?" He said, "No one called it in." He said, "Someone up above was watching out for y'all." And he said the fireman and I were even talking about this while we were putting the fire out. And he said, "If we didn't believe in God before, we do now." And so what had happened was the hospital, a fire alarm went off, and they were headed to the hospital, and on the way there, they got a call saying it was a false alarm. And he said, "We've never had a false alarm from the hospital before." And at the same time they were getting that call, a car was driving towards them, and they were going down the street where our house was on. A car was driving towards them and saw our house, the whole back of the house ablaze, and flagged them down. And they came and got the fire out. And he told me, he said, "We've never been on our way to a fire and been flagged down to another fire." And he said, "Someone up above was watching out for y'all." And then anyway, he told me my children had about 15 minutes and they would have all been dead from smoke inhalation because the smoke was already coming down off the ceiling several feet. So yeah, that was, the Lord saved me and my children out of that.
Wow, if that doesn't make you a believer, I don't know what it would take. That's incredible. that
Yes.
story, and just a series of circumstances too that were put in to save you, really. And
Yes.
thank goodness, because what the fireman had said to you, I can't even imagine what that would have been like. That would have been absolutely horrific for you. And you talk about, which I love, you talk about all these stories, just like your son said, and you share that. I mean, ultimately, when people read your book, what do you hope they take away, Cheryl Lynn?
Well, I hope that they realize that God wants more of us than just an hour on Sunday morning or reading our Bible every once in a while. He wants our whole heart. And he's already done his part. So when we give him our whole heart, he's just waiting there to show up and show it out in a big way. There are millions upon millions of people living in abuse. And they have probably all at one time or another asked themselves, why? Why me? Why is this happening to me? And why is not the right question, because we'll never probably ever know the answer to why. So the right question is, what do you do when you don't know why? And that's a question you can put the answer to yourself. And depending upon what answer you choose to that question will determine whether you become a victim or a victor.
And you were a victor. And once you made that decision, and especially with 7 children, because there'd be a lot of people listening, when you have children, it's even a whole different game, especially 7. And at such young ages is such a brave step. But once you made that step and you told us that glorious story about your daughter and helping out, and that she's in school and you're in school, and it all worked out and everybody pitched in, and that's the beauty of the big family. Did you just know in your heart, because you had that belief that, hey, this is going to be okay?
I did. I had no concerns about the future. I knew God was in it, and I knew he was going to take care of us.
Wow. So tell us about the title, washing the inside of the cup. It is your cup too, but it's washing the inside of the cup. Tell us how you came up with the title.
Well, in Matthew's, in the Bible, I think it's Matthew 23-26 maybe, Jesus told the Pharisees, he said, you're doing some okay things, you're tithing here and there. He said, but first wash the inside of the cup, because their hearts were still full of greed and anger and hypocrisy and all these things. And so I decided, God, when we're born again, he renews our spirit, but our flesh is still the same. And we have to renew our mind to line up with his word. And so that was kind of what I did through that whole process of, through that marriage. I was constantly renewing my mind daily and hourly. So that's how I came up with that name.
And then the subtitle, My Journey of Walking in the Spirit, of course, is what you're telling us, and the various stories and how you got through it, and then what happened on the other side, which I think is the big takeaway, because your book is the kind of book too, for everybody that's watching this, where you can pick it up at any point and read it.
Yes, and it's a quick read. It's not a long book, but yes, it's something I think that the Lord had all along had planned, and so I hope that it touches many millions of people's hearts. And by the way, I received an email a couple weeks ago from Nonfiction Authors Association saying the book had won a bronze award in 2 categories. And then also last week, I received an email from Literary Titan saying it had won a silver award from them.
Wow, congratulations on this. So I suggest you don't walk, you run and get Cheryl Lynn's book, because it'll fill you up. And whatever you're going through, listening to her story, I think shows you the way that, yes, you can do this. Have the belief, and what a difference that makes. Cheryl Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.